I've been doing clay for 56 years, and I've never worked for anyone else except myself and here. So it was really interesting to go through all these years of pictures and work and the emotions that went through it all, and how hard some of it was and how rewarding it was. But I'm going to take you on this journey. So I fell in love with clay when I was 16 years old. I watched somebody throw pots one day, and I rode my bike out to Los Gatos, like 15 miles on this one-speed bike, and I went home to my mother and I went, I just saw the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And my mom was like, what was it? I told her, I saw somebody take this lump of clay and make something out of it, and I was mesmerized. And she said, well, did you ask where you could take lessons? And I went, I can't talk to this woman, she's an artist. I was so intimidated and terrified. So she put me in the car, and we drove back to Los Gatos and asked where I could take classes. And it was amazing. My parents were really supportive of that. And so I got classes for my 16th birthday. And then I had more classes. And then they started realizing how much clay I was using. And I had to start paying for my own clay. So I had to start selling stuff. But I came from a manufacturing family. My grandfather had a bronze foundry. 4 generations of the Griffoul family had bronze foundries in Paris and did several Rodin sculptures, including The Thinker, is what we've been told. There's books being written about it now. So then my grandfather moved from Paris to New Jersey, started a foundry there, then moved to California and had a foundry there. So we grew up with like a little foundry in our backyard casting lead pellets. We'd collect them from construction sites and make things, and make army men and cowboys and Indians, and then we paint them with marble paint. And I just always loved making stuff. So I was sewing when I was 13, making beaded jewelry when I was 15, just to make I always was really driven to make my own money, because I did not want somebody telling me what to do. Ever. I got it. Help me. No, that's not mine. Okay, so I was a tap dancer. I have to share, I really thought I was really talented and I was going to be really good. And my dad was like, maybe next year. So this is one of my very first pots that I ever made. It's about 3 inches tall. I still have it. And I remember I said to my teacher, I want to learn how to make small neck bottles. And she goes, you're not good enough to do that. And I was like, watch me. So that's all it took. So I made 20 of them, brought them back to the studio and had them fired. This was me at 16 in the little pottery studio where I was taking lessons with the ladies with their bubble haircuts. And then I started really throwing. I started really practicing and throwing a lot. And I started throwing 25 pounds and 35 pounds and 50 pounds. And my mom would go, you're going to hurt your body. And I was like, that would never happen to me. So now every joint in my body is killing me. But these were large. These were like, 24 inches tall, and then I Griffouled them. So I'm going to kind of go through these. I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to try to move along. These are big. These are probably 35 pounds centered, and they're paper thin. So I would throw them, get them dry, stretch them, dry them more. I'd throw on 2 or 3 wheels at a time. So while one was spinning and drying, I would do the next one, and then the next one would be spinning and drying. So I'd stretch them so they were so thin. Sometimes they'd tear right through the wall. They're like eggshells. These are all raccoon because I was doing a lot of raccoon pieces at the time. Then I was a weaver also. I had a very unusual education. In elementary school, we had 11 table looms and 2 floor looms in my 6th grade class. My teacher collected them. So we learned a lot of math from warp and weft and how to put weaving together and how to figure out patterns. So I started weaving, and then when I went to high school, we had 7 floor looms in my high school. So weaving was a really big part of my life at that time. I was still doing pottery, of course, but I quit being a jock because I didn't have time to be a jock. I played baseball and volleyball and be on the swim team and do this. So I gave up the swim team. So these are big. This is about the size this piece was. This is when I was in graduate school. So I got a BA at San Jose State, an MFA at University of Puget Sound, and I spent a year in Italy, in Florence, at a private ceramic school there, but also through Cal State international programs. So I was doing bronze, jewelry, and clay at this other studio. with Professori Dottori Marcello Fantoni, who was not a doctor or a professor. He was just kind of a greasy Italian guy who liked to touch people inappropriately. So anyway, this was my MFA show was a combination of fiber and clay, because I was experimenting with the soft texture of fiber and the hard texture of the clay, trying to blend the concept together with color and texture. When I was in graduate school, I hired a guy named David Middlebrook to do a workshop at our school, and he was a really, really well-known ceramicist. He taught at San Jose State, and he ended up doing giant, big sculpture, public art pieces all over the place. And he just looked at me and he said, "You gotta get off the wheel. Just stop throwing. You're like addicted to it." And you know, when you're good at something, you want to keep doing it because it feels good. So I had to stop because I had to like go find some other way to express myself in clay that wasn't just on the wheel. So it was good for me. It was really, really good for me. It brought me to more hand building and ultimately to tile, which I wasn't planning on. This was a big fiber piece. I get a little overdone sometimes. This is like 8 feet across, and all this wool, I used to buy books on British sheep breeds and pick the breed I wanted with the staple and the length of the fur, the length of the wool, and then how crimped it was, because I was spinning and dyeing and making my own dyes, and that was when I wasn't throwing. So, anyway, more pots, and then I was playing again with hard surfaces and soft surfaces, and these are, you know, hollow tubes that I threw, and then I did a lot of this wrapping. Big, that's a very big pot. And then more fiber, plain fiber. And then this was after graduate school, I built my kiln. This was a 46 cubic foot gas kiln that I designed and built and did some of the welding and all the grinding and all the plumbing, and figured out the size of the burners, the size of the orifice for the burners, how many BTUs. I mean, I did a lot of studying to figure it all out. And then building it, you know, it was a lot of work. I wanted to learn how to weld, and my dad told me girls don't weld. As well as he told me girls don't drive trucks. So of course I've had trucks my whole life, big honking trucks. But this was my first firing, and I was so excited. I also, you can't see the building here, but cut down the trees to make the building, because I lived on 25 acres in Gig Harbor, Washington, and so I couldn't afford to buy the wood. So anyway, this is my first firing. It was pretty exciting. Fired perfectly even top to bottom, and every firing. It was great. This was, I was mixing clay. I got a commission to do a mural in Tacoma. It was supposed to be a paint, they were thinking of a painting, but I wanted to do a ceramic mural. And so we mixed 3 tons of clay in a cement mixer, and this was what I looked like for months. It was really fun. It was really a lot of fun. When I look back at how many tons of clay I've lifted in my life, probably hundreds. I couldn't afford to buy the clay, so we went to a place called Clay City, of course, and it was outside of Seattle, and they had a big mixer. They dug the clay right out of the earth. They had a big disc that went this way and a big disc that went this way, so as it came off the conveyor belt, they crushed it. It was the clay crusher, and it was dry, and they told me I could have all the free clay I wanted if we went in after work with shovels and dug out the sides of it and put it in garbage cans and took it home and then mixed our own clay. So that's what we did for 3 tons of clay in a half-ton truck. So it was a lot of driving and hoping the axles wouldn't break. This was the mural. It's 10 feet by 100 feet. It's not one of my favorite pieces, but it is because I had this attitude that I could do anything. I'm like, okay, I don't care if I lose money on it. I don't care how hard it is. This is a big wall, and I get to put something on it. So I was so excited that they let me. The tiles are 45 pounds each. They each fit on one shelf in my kiln. There's 320 tiles, and I could fit like 10 in a firing. So I wanted to pull in the design as far as the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, the Puget Sound, the color, and the wall was really uneven. So we had to use a 25 caliber stud gun to shoot studs into the wall to hang the tiles until the glue set, because nothing was going to hold it in place. So we did that. So I learned how to put together scaffolding. We were on 20-foot scaffolding, stud guns, mixing. This is my brother. I think think I'd be getting $3 an hour. It was more than I was getting. And then this is putting up our last one. We have our hard hats and we were obviously it was up for a long time, and then they finally redid downtown. It was up for like 20 years, and then they redid downtown, and I knew it was one day going to be gone. These are some more of my raccoon pots. This is when I cleaned up a little bit. I think there's still play on my pants though. I think I just put a clean shirt on. This is for some magazine or something. Then I did a lot of wall sculptures. So this was probably sort of the beginning of my tile, because I wanted to start doing not throwing, and I was selling in a lot of galleries all up and down the West Coast. My big raccoon pieces, and then this is my 80s period. So you can tell by the colors and the design, this is very 80s. The fabric, the pillows, like the whole thing. So, you know, this was a woman in Beverly Hills that wanted me to do a custom floor for her bathroom, and she had Picasso's on the wall. And she had such a giant art collection, it was unbelievable. So I thought it was pretty cool. I gave her this, what I thought was a huge price to do these 2 floors, and she was like, no problem. And I went, I can get away with this? This is fun. I did lots and lots and lots of commissions. I mean, this is a waterfall, a spa in somebody's house. But I have to say, and I do have a poster here about the advantages of being a woman artist. There are a lot of misogyny when I was growing up in the clay business. It's interesting now, there's so many women here, it's incredible, because when I was in undergraduate school, I was the only female as a freshman, and in graduate school there were 2 women. In the tile business, there's basically very few women. There's getting to be more and more now, but there was nobody. So this installer was so mean to me the whole time, and they would always think I'm just the designer, or I just drew it. But not that I made it, or that I knew anything about installation or anything like that. It was hard sometimes. More the 80s, that was the 80s too. But also figuring out how to hang these. So I had to, the first piece I hung in a lawyer's office fell off the wall in front of me. And so I went, well, that didn't work. We thought we had these clips that fit perfectly, but they were for cabinets, and if you're off like a 1/16 of an inch, it doesn't slide in all the way. So I had French. As I was driving out of the parking lot of the lawyer's office, I had designed these French clips, basically, that, you know, you put one on the wall, you put one this way, you put it on the whole back. So I had to learn how to, you know, use skill saws and jigsaws and everything to cut out the plywood on the back, and then use the right glue, and then sand all the edges, gesso them, and paint them so that the edges looked like it was just, from the side, it just was invisible. You didn't want to notice that it was on plywood. But then hanging all these, you know, this is hard. It's heavy, they're big, they're tall. I didn't have a crew to come in and hang these. I was the crew. This is a show I had at the San Luis Obispo Art Center. It was a one-person show, and I was making a lot of tables, hand-built, big, chunky pieces, and putting glass on them, and then these big raccoon pieces, and wall sculptures. It was pretty fun to have a whole room of just being able to put everything together with my stuff. So I did a lot of, in my, well, let me back up a little bit. So I got into the tile business because I needed to make a living. I didn't really ever, it wasn't like I had a dream I'm gonna grow up and make tiles someday. I wanted to tap dance. And so, but I was getting divorced, and I had to figure out how am I going to make a living and support my kids and take care of all the bills. And I could have taught in a university, but then I'd have to move my kids, and I didn't want to upset them and move everything. So I just looked at myself and went, what do I know? What resources do I have? Can I do this? And I really had to, I developed this whole business just out of necessity, really. And then I made some tile, and this woman named Ann Sachs she saw my tables from that show, and she said to someone, I need to meet this woman, I want her to design a line of tile for me. And if you know anything about the tile business, Ann Sachs Tile and Stones are really, really high-end line of showrooms that's owned by Kohler. And so she asked me to design a line for her, so I made one board with all these really abstract pieces, because I thought, if I'm gonna be in this business, I'm gonna make tile like no one's ever seen before. I want it to be a surprise, I want it to be fun. They're not gonna be 4x4s and 6x6s, because you can't compete on just doing that. It has to be by design. So I created all these designs. This is the ginkgo design. We've got ginkgos and Japanese maples and all kinds of leaves that would be in bloom at the same time that would be these colors. And then I had fallen leaves, and then I had coffee cups. I mean, all these millions of designs. But you know, I really had to like dig deep and like, how am I going to do this and make this work? And are people really going to buy this? So I did this one design for her. She looked at the board, and like 2 months later, she's advertising in Architectural Digest full-page ads. I'm like, holy crap, I'm in the tile business. How do I sell this stuff? How do I price it? How do I install it? How do I make sure what I make is gonna get installed the way I'm looking at it? How am I gonna trust installers to do this? I mean, it was learning kind of ass backwards. Like, you know, I could see what I want the end product to be, but then I had to work backwards to the very beginning of the bag of clay to figure out how am I gonna take this raw material and make it into something I can actually make money from and that people are going to want to live with. And that's kind of how I grew up, because my father manufactured conveyor belts for factories. And so we grew up learning how people took a raw material and added value to it and then made it into something that they could sell and make a profit from. So my whole life in sewing for other people when I was 13 and then making beaded jewelry and weaving and doing this was always about how can I take something and be creative with it and add value to it and make a living from it. This was a waterfall in a hotel in, this is a hotel lobby, it's like 20 feet high. And this is another one where the men looked at me like, who are you? Why'd they hire you? You don't, you know, we have to install this thing? I'm like, yeah, everything's numbered, this is how you're gonna do it. And, you know, it ended up being, I mean, it was fun. Now this is one of my favorite posters, and I brought it because, you know, the Guerrilla Girls were a group of women in New York who would protest at galleries and museums because they couldn't get shows, they couldn't get their work in. The shows were all men, and so I just saw this, you know, women, the advantage of being a woman artist, you can work without the pressure of success because you're a woman, you're never going to be successful, right? I mean, some of these are really funny. Never having undergo the embarrassment of being a genius. Anyway, I brought this so you could read it on your own. This is the fallen leaf floor. This is probably about 14 feet in diameter. Another fountain. Oh, here's this is not in the beginning, Max.
No, it'll start from the beginning.
It will?
Yeah, it will.
Okay. Thank you, Zoe. So this is a little video of my factory.
From our studios in Santa Barbara County to homes and businesses around the world, I've been designing and manufacturing beautiful and durable tile for over 35 years. Our tile making process is as conservative as it can be in not creating waste in the first place. We try to be aware on a daily basis of our impact on the earth and lessen it in every way we can. We're full members of the Tile Council of North America. Our tiles are put through rigorous tests in their lab to document their durability, chemical resistance, and commercial floor rating. They're not only beautiful, they're robust and resilient. I'm a member of the Tile Council's Green Initiative Committee to create standards for green tile manufacturing in North America. I design all of our tiles, and we have over 400 tile designs in our collection. Many designs have been saved by me, but some of our best ideas come from our customers. Each and every design that we make is a Michelle Griffoul Studios original. We love working with customers that want an original design. We can create something for you or collaborate with you to come up with something unique. We can even take your logo or design and make it out of tile in any combination of our over 100 colors in our color palette. Let's start our tour of the green manufacturing process that Michelle Griffoul Studios uses. We buy all of our clay by 10 tons at a time and refine it wet, so we don't manufacture our own clay. That way it keeps the dust down, and we can start with 25 pounds right here. It all begins right in this room. We only move our clay one time to conserve energy. We don't use conveyor belts.
He's now my
Everything is
lawyer.
handled by our
He took 3 years off. Now he's my attorney.
hand wedge our clay for consistency prior to rolling it out into a slab on the hand-operated slab roller.
This is a 36-inch brick. how we move that slab?
Patterns are put onto the wet clay for precise cutting. After the full slab of tiles is hand cut, the waste is reworked into more tiles.
So I've never been in a tile factory, so I just made this up. This seemed logical. I don't know that it was, but
Hand cleaning and carving makes each piece at Michelle Griffoul Studios unique. %of our tiles are truly made by hand. For the remaining tiles, we use our 40-ton hydraulic press. I carve all of the original patterns on site in our studio.
now, we did use this for making 4x4s and 6x6s because Ann Sachs really wanted field tile to go with all the other stuff with the same glazes, so I had to give in.
Where was the studio?
Buellton. It was in Buellton.
Again, as you can see, all of the wet scrap clay is immediately reused and made into more tile.
So that's a hydraulic pug mill on top of a hydraulic pug mill. So you don't have to push the clay down by hand, the hydraulic just pushes it down for you.
Here you can see the entire cycle. We do not waste anything.
That's water that's pushing it out, it's steam. But it's not hot.
This is our solar drying area. We're fortunate to live in Santa Barbara County where we can take our carts and racks and have our tables out here and dry all of our tile outside. It's sunny probably 95% of the year, and so we utilize the sun every single day in drying our product. Most tile factories use a lot of energy and gas-fueled drying roads to force dry their tiles. But where we live with the sun and the breeze, even in the winter, we're still able to dry our tiles outside most of the year. After our tiles are dried in the sun, we bring them into the glazing department to be hand glazed. We don't bisque fire our tiles because we feel that they are dried so completely by the sun, it's not necessary. They're very observant, very dry, and perfect for our hand glazing technique. We use Japanese brushes to glaze all of our tiles.
3 coats on every line. Cone 5.
We use many sizes of Japanese brushes to glaze all of our tiles except our field and square mosaics. We glaze those with paint rollers instead of spraying. We didn't want to have any overspray to recycle. Our goal to be green has always been to work in a way that doesn't create waste in the first place, so we have so much less to recycle.
Up at the crack of dawn, wear that shirt almost every day.
Run at 9:30 at night and they go off by 8:30 in the morning. This reduces the amount of energy required on the grid during the day as well as our costs. As each project comes into the layout department, it's already been in the wet clay department, the glaze department, come out of the kilns, and then we get all the pieces in here. Many of our projects involve thousands and thousands of pieces of mosaics that all have to be arranged and assembled by our layout department. Every project that we do is laid out to the customer's specifications, so every single project is different. If you want a project that's 10 1/4 inches by 43 3/4, we will lay it out to your specifications, and if we're given the correct measurements, the installer shouldn't even have to use a tile saw at all. This is a water line that we just finished for a customer, and it's 140 linear feet, 10 inches high. This customer chose about 18 different colors in their mosaic, so it's a very complicated layout, and it involves a fish approximately every linear foot. You can see here that we have numbers on each section, so after we've laid out the design, we tape it, so we hold it all together for the installer, then we number each section so each section fits together perfectly and the installer knows where to put them. As you can see, every section is an irregular cut because we don't want it to look like the installer just had repeated patterns of linear foot sections that just stuck together. We want it to look like the installer installed each piece individually, but we want to control the artwork here. So we carefully prepare for that way. We make a layout map and we keep a digital file of the layout map and a photograph of each project that we ship. So if someone wants to add on to a project, we know their exact colors, we know the specifications of the size, we know everything that they need so we can add on. We've had customers come back to us 10 years later and say that they wanted to add on to something that they had ordered, and we were able to match it and make it fit perfectly for them. This is a typical project where we start with thousands of pieces of mosaic. The correct placement of each piece will determine the beauty of the final product. So I'd like you to change the tip of the wave so that it has more blue mixed in with the white, so we can really tell that that's water and this is the way the wave comes down and that this is the sky. And the same thing with this wave, let's pull more blue all the way into here. Give me pieces. I think that's the piece. So we really can see there's a distinct difference. Then when it's grouted, we'll see this is water with wave coming down and this is water. The moon is too small. We use 12-inch wide tape to secure the mosaics in place.
Wait, just wait a minute.
We cut each
Okay,
section
I
to
think
approximately one
we can
square.
stop this here. I just wanted you to see that was made for the green manufacturing, because we really were trying to encourage tile facilities to manufacture in a way that wasn't wasteful, wasn't using more energy than they needed to. You're digging raw materials out of the ground, you know, it's not really a green process. But we're trying to make it look good. This is Bernie Toppin's pool, in the valley. He lives in San Andreas, so I got to work with him in designing this, and he came to my studio a couple times. And then we just did, you know, bathrooms, kitchens, all kinds of stuff. Every project was custom. We made every piece in here except the toilet and the sink. And the towels. Fireplaces. This was for a Ronald McDonald House, and they have, you know, they bring in families, and so this, I made this and donated it to them, because, you know, they need it. But we had fun doing it, because all the ice cream is three-dimensional, and everybody got to make their favorite sundaes out of ice cream, and we placed them all. This is at the Santa Barbara Zoo. Many, many years ago I did that, with another woman, Beth Amin. And then we liked doing things that were really difficult. That was always my favorite part. So, you know, cutting, my ex-husband was a tile installer extraordinaire. So he installed this and cut the wood in so it fit perfectly. And then you have to have a soft joint on this outside line because the floor and the wood are gonna move differently. So you really have to take into consideration how the installation's done and the correct materials. I learned a lot from him. He wrote several books on tile installation, and the last one is up here, which is, I'm a co-author on it too. So I did some of the editing and made most of the tile in it, and so it's by both of us. So another little side job. And then I love Hawaii. I just love Hawaii, and I ended up moving to Hawaii. So I had to include this because that's why there's so many fish in so many of my designs. I've practiced with tessellated designs. I love tessellations, and I did lots of tessellated patterns. Nobody wanted to buy them. I thought that was really dumb. But, you know, now tessellated patterns are becoming more and more popular, and you can do amazing color combinations with them, but I just think they were fun. This was just Compass Rose for somebody. These are walleye fish that was for a walleye restaurant in Minnesota or something. I did a lot of parks too. I think we're gonna get to parks. This is, where is she? There she I did this dome on Hollywood Boulevard, and it was right after the first attempt of the bombing of the World Trade Center, the first one, which was in the 90s, I think the late 90s. So this guy was Middle Eastern, and he really wanted me to do it, but he was so afraid of the building getting attacked, so he didn't want it to look too Islamic, but he wanted it to have an Islamic feel to it. And he studied a lot of Middle Eastern carpet patterns, because I really love their weavings and all their patterns that they make in their carpets and their wall sculptures. So this bottom part, I tried to make something that was more earthbound, so it's kind of bringing you down to the ground. And then the stars actually were in constellations, and I made a paper pattern to put on the whole roof. This is 4 stories up. I'm up there, you'll see, on scaffolding with this guy who hated me and kept telling me to get off his scaffolding. And I'm like, but you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. So we were arguing up on the scaffolding all the time. And then this is him, and then some magazine wanted me to be on the top of it. So I shimmied up to the top. Another floral pattern. And then I started experimenting with using stone. This is a mix of slate and mosaic, so I used a lot of different slates. This is 14 feet high and 14 feet wide, and it's a waterfall in a tile showroom, and these are sinks that they set up that look like, it's supposed to be like a flower, so it's like a garden. It's really big. And then I started doing more things with slate and tile, which I thought was really fun. It had a real organic move to it, and it was just different than the 80s. This is a wall that I wanted it to look like striations of the earth coming through, but it's slate mosaic, and then the water line in the pool is all porcelain, but it matches that as well. The bathroom with that idea. And then I love doing furniture too. So these are made out of foam. They're styrofoam, kind of built like a fat surfboard with a piece of plywood in the middle, and then they're wrapped in fiberglass and then they spray cement on them for me so I can attach tile to them. This is a great pattern. This is one of my favorite guys. He couldn't stand it, he had to climb it. But we had to build the crates to ship everything, and we had to figure out how to do all that. Tomas, I ended up giving him my business actually. He worked for me for about 15 years, and I gave him, when I quit, a couple kilns, a slab roller, all my contacts, my glaze recipes, and he's still making tile, mostly for swimming pools.
What does it weigh?
Huh?
What does it weigh?
The what?
That bench.
The bench? Well, it's foam. I don't know, Gabe, what does it weigh? You
About
moved a lot of
1,000
them. This is my son, he moved a lot of them. It weighs more than we want it to.
It's a lot lighter than it could be though.
Yeah, it's not solid concrete. The weight is in the tile and the thin set and the grout. The forms, you can carry the forms that look like Wonder Woman, because I carry these forms around and they're light. This is for a Tommy Bahama store somewhere. And then I did several public art projects. There's lots of these. I just showed these. These were donor benches at Solana Beach train station. And then lots of tables, and I had these bases made because I liked the way they were welded and very branchy looking. So I used to buy lots of the bases and then make the tops and sell them. This one is a coffee cup this is a coffee table with all coffee cups on the top. And that's just kind of a detail of the design. This went to a Cajun restaurant. Andouille sausage, crayfish, oysters, clams. This was the donor, I did several donor walls also. This was at the Ty Warner Sea Center, but now they took his name off it, so they had to take this down. But, you know, this was at Hollister Ranch. I did this whole guy's house. This is the entryway where we just put leaves spaced out. And then this is the, oops, I didn't do it. And these are bronze pieces. So because the stone business started getting really big, I felt like I was losing out work to people that were just buying stone, so I needed to make accent pieces to go with stone. So I did a whole line of bronze tiles, and there's some embedded here. This is another thing that I really had fun with, and we used to do parks like this, where I'd work with kids and they would make a whole bunch of tiles, and then when they were laying a walkway, this was at my building. I own 2 buildings in Buellton where my studio was, and I wanted to experiment so I could get these pictures of how we did this, so that other people could understand it. So the concrete's wet, we've got all these tiles out there, we push them down into the wet concrete, and it has to be wet, it cannot be hard at all. Then they screed over it, and then there's a lot of sugar in Coca-Cola. So this guy said, we were using something else to rinse off all the small, fine particles of concrete. He sprayed Coca-Cola on it, and you'll see, then he broomed off all the fine cement particles, and you can see everything coming up from the walkway. That looks so cool. But we did a really big park called Sunnyfields Park in Solvang. If you ever go there, I worked with 10 groups of kids, 10 kids in each group, and I had them come into my studio and all make the animals and critters that they were their favorites of the Santa Ynez Valley, and we embedded it all. We used red concrete. They look so cool, and it's been like 20 years, and these kids go back now, they're adults, and they go, let's visit my little skunk. This was just, we don't have to go through this. We had to make videos of how to install. This was done by a showroom. And he's showing how easy it is to install these. That's about 8 feet. And this is the magnolia pattern. So magnolia leaves, magnolia seed pods, buds, flowers blooming, flowers just popping out. Then I did the Harbor Restaurant in 2004. I don't know if you guys have been in there, remodeling it now, but half of it is still there. But to do a project like that, we had to make a paper pattern of where the tile's gonna go, how it's gonna get laid out. And they wouldn't let us into the building before 11:30 at night. And we had to work from 11:30 at night till 8 in the morning. So see this pattern, and then here's the tile. So there's the paper pattern, and there's the tile. There's about, I don't know, 50,000 pieces of tile in that at least. And they kind of were not very nice to me, so they were like, how do we know it's gonna be any good? How do we know it's not gonna chip? So I was so nervous about that. We hand sponged every single tile so that it didn't chip. And it hasn't. It's still there 20 years later. So these were the stairs before, these are the stairs that we did. So there's a trade show called Coverings. It's the biggest tile trade show in the world. I used to have a booth in it, and they used to have a competition every year. So I won the first place for commercial design for this restaurant, which was really exciting, $2,500 for that. I also won the grand prize for the show, which was another $10,000. So that was 20 years ago. So I just shared it with all my employees. But it was really a big deal because no woman-owned factory had ever won any award from them ever. And no one had ever won 2 in 1 year. So it was pretty exciting. It was a change. And I love doing columns. And again, these are styrofoam. So my kids were with me in the car when we picked up these columns. I had a big red Suburban, and there was this place in Hayward that made these columns, and these were mistakes, they were mismeasured or something. So we had a surfboard rack on the car, and I put 3 columns on the surfboard rack and drove home from there, and my kids were like, "This is so embarrassing. You have no idea, this is not cool." I went, "You don't know, this is really cool."
But what was the Suburban called?
Huh?
What was the Suburban called?
So then we had to pack and ship these. If we sold, I did sell some of them. So, you know, we had to crate them. We had to crate everything. It was a lot of work. Make sure things didn't ship. And they got there. They were so fun to do. I think that's what I'm going to start doing again. I don't know what I'll do with the columns, but these were just baby leaves, just a transition. This was in a showroom. And then this was a mural. This is Lee Strasberg, who has an acting school in LA on Fairfax, and his son commissioned me to do this mural of him. I didn't do the whole design. It was actually, I took it from another design that another painter had done, and he really loved this painting and asked me if I could make a mosaic for the outside of the building. So I did. So it's 10 feet by 15 feet. And 10 different colors of grout, because I really like having the transition, like there's pink here, and there's light blue here, and dark blue here, and white here, and light tan, and dark tan, and pink, and blue, and white, and I mean, it's, you know, the installers hate me. So here's where we have to tape off each section. Roger, aren't you glad you didn't? It's like, I know. Awful, what a pain in the butt, I know. And then, but I wanted the design, if you can see, like we made all of our trim pieces, so I wanted the colors of the trim to all go, so the whole thing just flowed. With each color, there's a lot of colors, and making sure that we made enough of each trim piece in each color. Everything is numbered, you can see.
Is that still there, Michelle?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of pieces. And then I made 3 different sets of eyeballs because I didn't really know how they were gonna look from a distance, and I wanted the son to decide which eyeballs he liked. Because each one, to me, they didn't look that different in my studio, but when we put them up on the wall and stood across the street, one of them made him look very stern. And one of them made him, they just had such a different look, and I didn't realize how different they were. And these are the eyeballs themselves. So. I did a lot of parks. This was a park where this young boy had died, and his parents built this park. This was his favorite book. This is The Carrot Seed. This, you know, I did a lot of things like this. I don't have to go into all the details, but it was very detailed. Every texture is a different color, so kids who are blind can feel the textures of each one. And then the buttons, there's buttons on here. There's a sound so they can hear the story being told to them. I did a lot of parks and donated a lot of tile for parks.
Where's this one?
It's in LA. I could find out where it is. I don't remember the name of it. And then I went into his brothers, he had triplet brothers, and went into their classrooms, and they each had them, I made tiles, and they each got to glaze a tile of their interpretation of the carrot seed. So all their tiles are embedded on this wall too. Then I took them all back to my studio in Buellton and fixed the glazes and fired them all and then brought them back. So, but it's still there and they love it. They were thrilled. This was, then I really started wanting to do swimming pools because I'm a water person. And this was my first swimming pool. It was my pool in Los Olivos, and it's like 22 by 42. It's pretty big. And we installed all the tile. Made all the tile, installed all the tile. Notice those ladders are not even. And this is after it was plastered. That shark, that black tip lemon shark, is 7 feet. It's pretty big. This is what it looks like to do a trade show. I had to make sample boards of everything, pack it up, ship it, decide what I wanted to sell, price it. This is at the Museum of Natural History here. Peggy Maximus was my husband's aunt, my ex-husband's aunt. And so Peggy and I were very close, and so this is the entrance to the museum. Another pool, I think you saw this in the beginning of the video. But I wanted to show you how we had to make sure that the pattern, you could see the bottom of this pool from their house, from the second story. So if this pattern was off like an inch in the middle, it would be off 3 feet on the sides. And so you would know, so it had to be absolutely perpendicular in the bottom of the pool. And we didn't have lasers at this time, so this was, it was 113 degrees this day. I remember. bottom of the pool with these guys arguing about, no, it's not straight, no, you have to turn it this way more. No, that's not right. And this is how I laid it out in the studio, and then this is how it went into the pool. And this here, I couldn't figure out how to put these together, but anyway. This is another pool, this is actually in Hope Ranch. And so these are black tiles to create the shadows, so it looks like the turtles are actually floating. This is a big pool, this is a 20 by 60. So we went down, when we made these, put them in the pool, so it really looked like the turtles are all swimming down like this, and then the spotted eagle rays are coming back up, and you know, we're down in the bottom of the pool moving and then climbing back up and going, well, no, that needs to go 3 inches this way. And this is the water line that you saw, that I talked about in the video. This pool is 180 linear feet of water line. There's a lot of tile. This is the spa. And she wanted no diving signs. So I thought I'd really make it very literal, what your head's gonna look like. That's that water line being laid out that was in the video. And I gotta say, installers are so important. I mean, I need to work hard to prepare it so that they can do a good job putting it in, because it's complicated. And they wanna do a good job, and they wanna be really proud, and you know, in the beginning, a lot of installers would go, this isn't gonna work, this is a pain in the neck, you know, who are you? Then at the end, they're taking photographs going, look what we did, because this is so cool. They didn't know that this was even possible. Then I did a line of glass tiles, because I kind of had to move, I wanted to do something new. So I started fusing glass. I taught myself how to do that. I brought a couple glass pieces here that I just do fuse glass just kind of for fun, but you know, I'm making bowls, but I did make a lot of glass tiles, and that was another line that I developed. 1 by 6s, 2 by 2s, and 1 by 1s. And this is the bronze line. So these are pieces that people could just buy, you know, 20 leaves or 30 leaves and input them into their stone floors or their fireplaces or whatever. And this is another way that they were used. Their spa. This is the book house that's on Mountain Drive. And he, you know, I don't know if you know about the book house, but the whole house looks like a packed stack of books. And what's his name? Can we remember his name? I can't remember right now, but anyway, he's a really interesting guy. So they, huh? Ted Gardner, thank you. And he's written a lot of books. So he wanted the tile to look at books, because nobody will ever use this shower. The house is built as a museum, but to get the zoning, he had to put in a bathroom and a kitchen, because they couldn't just build a museum, they had to build a house. And now the house is a museum with a cool bathroom and kitchen. So I also did the whole kitchen, but the house is on a slant, on an angle, so it makes you crazy. Some of these are like 3/8 of an inch. These are, you know, I had to make it drain properly, so it went down the drain. So they're teeny tiny, all numbered, read my little books. This is the pool that we won the grand prize for this is in Florida, for the show where we won $10,000. But mostly, the show is sponsored by the Italian Tile Council, the Spanish Tile Council, and the Tile Council of North America. So they all have to vote on who's gonna win, and they really thought this was all done by an Italian man. And they were really disappointed when they found out. These are the clients that I love, you know, lots of money, trust me. How much do you want to charge for this? Oh, and I was there, and they were like, where else can we put tile? I said, well, how about these stair risers? Okay. Oh, they have a bathroom downstairs. Okay, let's do that. And they were just the greatest clients, and they let me put lizards and frogs and turtles in their walkway, and it was just so fun. This is a mural. This is one of my favorite projects. It's at the Louis B. Stokes Vet Hospital in Cleveland, and it's 6 feet by 40 feet. It's a wall it's next to a swimming pool that's a rehab pool. So these people are coming back from Afghanistan or Iraq, and they've got to do water rehab. I wanted to create like a fantasy that they were not in a basement in Cleveland in January, that they were like really somewhere else. And so I created sort of my fantasy of what I love, which is water and beach and So, I'll show you, this is us laying it out. So these tables are 4 feet by 8 feet, and this is 40 feet long. And there's a lot of pieces in here. So I would make all the big elements first. I would draw the palm trees. I did a schematic of the whole thing. Put it into a one inch scale so that I knew the exact size of every tree and every leaf and everything's gonna be. And then we placed those where they were gonna go. Then we start filling in the mosaics. It takes a lot of time to do this. That's Tomas way down there. Then we had to tape the whole thing, number it all, make sure it's packed properly, make sure nothing broke, ship it, and then I went to Cleveland and helped install it. And this room, because it's a rehab room, was about 102 degrees. Outside it was 2 degrees. So this room was so hot, I had my pants rolled up because we were grouting. And again, this has about 10 colors of grout. We have to go in and tape off each section where each color is gonna be. Then I retired and moved to Maui. It was my dream. That's why I put that other picture in of being in water. It was my dream. I always wanted to have a small house with a big view. And so I bought 2 acres. This was 10 years ago, and I built this house, and this was my studio on the left. So the studio was 1,200 square feet. The house was 1,500 square feet. I brought 5 kilns, a slab roller, a ton of clay, and all my tools and all my glass stuff, and this was my retirement. But I thought, I get to make stuff and not worry about selling it, you know, I called it my dessert, because I could just make stuff and throw it away if I wanted to, it didn't really matter. Oh, this is a little short video, I forgot about this. This is something else I did in Maui. Because I really was very much an environmentalist, so,
There you go.
it's just 2 minutes. And somebody asked me if they could film me for this, because I was doing a lot of volunteer work on clean water
I started
issues.
being a potter when I was in high school. When I was 16 years old, I saw a woman throwing pots, and I just thought it was the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen. I started throwing pots, and I was crazed. I just thought I'd fallen completely in love. It was like a drug, and I just started
This is my
making
studio
a lot of
there.
pottery, and then it was expensive, so I had to start selling my pottery. I had been making tiled wall sculptures, and someone asked me if they could have me design some floors for them in Beverly Hills. I made these floors, and they were really abstract, beautiful floors, and she loved them, and I went,
This is my
I guess
pool
like
in
the town
Maui.
business. I've been coming to Maui for about 25 years. I just started seeing how beautiful the reefs were and the fish, and I was so excited. My goal was always to be able to move here, and I'm very fortunate that I was able to do that. The more I snorkeled and the more time I spent underwater and saw the changes in the reef, it really inspired me to be more proactive in what I could do to try and help save it. I worked really hard with helping to get the ban for the oxybenzone and octinoxate passed. I worked hard with all the boat operators here to get oxybenzone and octinoxate free on the boats by the gallon, so that customers who were bringing their own more toxic sunscreens on the boats would have an alternative to use on the boats. I made this whole connection as a volunteer for the Maui Nui Marine Resource Council. When I moved here, I really thought the ocean would just clean itself. We're in the middle of the ocean, the flow would come and it would go, and there wouldn't be any residue, there wouldn't be brown water. I didn't know that these events really went on. And when I started seeing how it was happening and how detrimental it was to the coral reefs, not to mention the rise in temperature that we had in 2014 and 2015 was so devastating to the coral and to the rest of the marine life, because if the coral's not alive, the fish can't be there, and they have nothing to eat. And so the whole thing is so connected. When I realized we can't control the heat, but we can control a lot of other things. And to me, it was just critical that we do everything that we can to try and educate people to make a difference and to keep this place as beautiful and healthy as it is. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm really excited to be able to participate, to just make it better. My little tiny bit.
Anyway, that was a lot of what I did in Maui. Water quality testing at 6 beaches every 2 weeks at 7 o'clock in the morning for 3 years. So this is one of my outdoor showers, and I've always wanted to do this tile pattern, and I didn't think I could ever sell it, and so I did it in my house. That's one piece of basalt tub. This is my other shower, and the turtles are swimming out to the see. And this was the inside of my pool, because when I couldn't see whales all the time, I just said that I need to build one. So, this is a 25-foot whale, and I drew it. I studied whales a lot. I was trained to do whale talks on boats and stuff. So, this was, and I had to make it so that, you know, it had to fit the curve of the pool perfectly, and have just 1 inch of clearance here and an inch of clearance at the bottom for the curve. And these are the guys installing it. Heard a lot of really good Hawaiian music while they were doing this. And this is the inside. And that's the water line. I did a fused glass water line. There's 5,000 pieces. And I really love the reflection of this. I wanted the color of the pool to be the same color as the ocean. And there's a spotted eco ray over there. And then I did all the walkways and embedded stuff in the concrete here. Inside, and I think it's just about, oh, this is my house here. Peter, my wonderful partner, it's a logarithmic spiral. Is that right? So he drew the spiral. This is 9 feet. This is the entranceway to our house here. This is laying it out. Tomas came back to celebrate me being back in Santa Barbara to help me. It was very sweet. And then a mailbox with koi fish. And now I'm making things like this. This is a little mirror I just made a few weeks ago. So I'm just playing. These are my best projects. These are my best sculptures. Amazing Rose, they're here. Thank you. You have questions?
Why'd you leave Maui?
A lot of reasons. The politics were awful. It's really corrupt. I missed my kids.
Oh,
You know, I mean, I love it here. It's a much broader life for me here. You know, I was coming back to visit a lot, and it's just, I'm really happy to be here. Yeah.
How common is it in the tile industry to just do a single firing, like you did?
A lot, very common.
Oh, so that's really typical.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, most tile factories are dry press tile,
I see.
and so there's no water in them anyway. But for most people, probably, I bisquired stuff if I was gonna stock things, but we didn't really stock a lot, because, you know, this is so I couldn't break it, but other than that, we just cram it right through. Yeah.
Why, didn't the sun-dried, tiles work?
Because we were really careful how we handled the wet clay. If you don't bend it when it's wet, it's not gonna have that memory to warp. We had almost no warpage. And we picked up every slab. Those are 25-pound slabs. There's a whole bag of clay you saw. Picked it up and put it down and never had warpage. Also, we turned them over. We'd make them one day, we'd turn them over the next day, but we really didn't have to handle them a lot. We didn't cover them with boards. We didn't do any of that stuff. We just wanted to make money.
How
Yeah.
thick were the tiles?
A half inch.
How thick? Oh,
A half inch, yeah, a half inch. So they shrink down to, yeah, that probably helped too. They weren't very thin. But that was kind of standard for handmade tile, so it kind of went with everything else. Some of them in those pictures looked thicker, but they weren't. They were not more than a half inch.
Well, what sort of clay bottom did you use?
I used Cone 5 Buff. I forget what it's called, but it's it's 52 with sand. And then we did porcelain. We did a lot of porcelain. So I also had to learn about expansion and contraction, freeze thaw, because I did swimming pools in New York. So I had to make tiles, have them tested, figure out what the absorption rate's going to be, because it has to be less than 3%. Because if it absorbs moisture and you have a swimming pool on the East Coast, they're going to expand. It's going to create ice crystals in the tile, and they're going to expand and shiver and come apart. So I had to make sure that that never happened. Well, Lisa suggested I talk about this one little thing. I'll try to make it quick, but I did a barbecue top for somebody in, I don't know, Indianapolis or something. And they came back later and they said, well, your tiles are breaking, we're gonna sue you. I was like, tiles shouldn't break. I had them all tested. I had testing labs, I had documents from testing labs. So I said, it's gotta be in the installation. And so, they didn't believe me, so they said, we're gonna go to the Tile Council of North America and we're gonna hire a real consultant and blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, fine. So they went to Tile Council of North America. They hired my ex-husband. Because that's what he did. He was a consultant. We were still married at the time. It was pretty funny. And you know, he said, "Well, how'd you do it?" Because I knew they put it on plywood. They said, "Well, it was exterior plywood." It doesn't matter. They didn't seal it. They didn't waterproof it. So the plywood absorbed moisture. It expanded, and the pressure from that expanding broke everything. But it wasn't the tile. It was the wood. It was the way it was installed. So it was the only time I was ever really threatened with a lawsuit, other than I did a real abstract pattern for a kitchen for someone in Sausalito or something, and they installed it, and they called and said the colors are fading. And I went, "It's not possible. They don't fade." "No, the colors are fading. It's not right." I said, "Okay, what color grout did you use?" Well, they were going to use a light colored grout, and at the last minute they decided to use black. And it totally changed the way you look at color, because black absorbs light. It's going to really change the whole look of the thing. So people really make big mistakes by grout. And it's always a good idea to test your grout when it's dry and put it on some. Anyway, but that was another one. They were like, "No, it's all fading. Your tiles aren't there." I said, "Can't. It's not possible." Yeah.
Did you have a business manager, or had, like, it seems like you grew really fast, and how did you, and you did everything?
Well, I had people make tiles, but I mean, I did all the thinking, yeah. No, I didn't have a business manager.
So you did all the pricing.
I did all the pricing, yeah. And then the showrooms mark things up, like Ann Sachs marked things up 2.67 times. So I sold stuff for, you know, $70 a square foot, and they sold it for like $270 a square foot. Yeah, it was expensive. So, you know, it wasn't like you go to just any tile store and buy it. It was definitely expensive, but it was a lot of work. So, yeah.
Since they didn't have the internet back when you started, how did you get word out?
I'm really old. Thanks, Lisa. The tile business I did for about 35, 40.
Yeah.
So how did I what?
How did you get the word out? I mean,
I went to trade shows.
Oh, okay.
I went to
The
trade
architectural
shows, and then
houses.
once somebody said they were interested, then I'd have to go visit the showroom. So I've been in probably 40 something states, because I went to visit showrooms and teach people how to sell things. I had to go train people, and I did all that. No, I did have an operations manager for a couple of years, and that just gave me a little more freedom, but she didn't run anything other than she was supposed to be in charge of the employees, but she wasn't really. Her name was Bunny, but my employees called her Rabbit. I realized they weren't listening to her. Any other questions? Yeah. What, oh, just-
Well, first I want to thank you for being a pioneer in many ways. I feel like you literally paved the way for me. I own a community-based ceramic studio in Buellton on Industrial Way, and I cannot begin to tell you that probably once a week someone asks me if I know you, or if I work with you, or if it's in your old studio. So this was a pleasure, and listening to you.
Oh, thank you for coming. That's so nice.
We have, this is wonderful. I have so many specific questions that I don't want to, I'll just throw a couple
Later.
out there,
Right,
and then
okay.
I'm gonna beg you to go out to coffee with me.
I'll go to Industrial Eats anytime.
Okay. So I'm actually doing a mosaic on the side of the post office in Buellton.
Uh-huh.
So I have a million tile questions. I even have one of your former employees as one of my employees. So for me, I have all these questions regarding, you know, grout, the installation book, and yeah, all of the things when I don't get sued when I'm installing these things. So thank you so much. This is
Thank you for coming.
wonderful, and
Thank you.
I will try to connect with you for that,
Okay.
for that coffee.
I was just gonna say, I've always been impressed by you, but now I'm in awe.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you for the place studio, for having me, and all the great help. Yeah.
Is it true you fired Gabe?
I'm sure I fired him more than once. He's my son. Yeah, of course I did. And my daughter just kept quitting. You know? Okay, well, thank you.